And I would like to introduce my next and opening panel, which is about the advertising revolution in Singapore. As you know, Singapore has become quite a hub for this industry, so we're very happy to be able to host this. And we have our moderator, Wong from the Institute of Advertising of Singapore. If we could please get them up here. Hi, how are you?
Hi, very well, thank you.
And would you like to introduce the rest of the team?
Yes, sure.
Okay, great.
We are very pleased today to have Dasheng, Head of Commercial Planning and Solutions from Mediacorp. Dasheng. Seema Pumwani, Director of Institute of Advertising Singapore. And Vivian Yeung, Managing Director of MediaCom Singapore.
Great, thank you. So please take a seat. Let's get started. I hope that you guys enjoy.
Good morning. Very happy to have all of you. I think today we have an extremely interesting panel comprising of people who have worked in the Singapore media industry through their entire career, as well as people coming from different countries. Today the topic is, as you know, about the creative renaissance, actually what we can learn from it and how we're going to move forward to propagate them. As we know, Singapore has been winning a number of accolades in media recently. Very interested to find out from you, Dasheng, okay, because you've worked in StarHub, Singtel, Mediacorp through your entire career. How you experienced the creative renaissance, and what do you think has helped to Singapore's creativity grow during the time you've been working?
Good morning, everybody. It's interesting that my entire career kind of mapped what the Singapore government was trying to do. I graduated in 1992, and I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to go overseas to study, and a government scholarship. And during that time, it was the formation of the NAC, and then when I'd gone back, I think the arts scene started buzzing. I actually started my career making and selling weaponry. So this wasn't like my starting point. Subsequently, I moved on to work in pay TV, and I think that was also part of the government's blueprint to start making the media industry in Singapore much buzzier. And through government grants and inviting channels to be in Singapore, I think that grew, and we saw that, and the proliferation of channels and the content that we all enjoy. Over that time, I guess that's when you started seeing more buzz. And how I felt more buzz was that I actually had to become so much more competitive to get creative people on my team. I was competing with other channels who were joining Singapore, competing with ad agencies. All that sort of happened. And then when the final blueprint for the Renaissance City was launched in, I think, in the year 2000, that was extremely exciting for all of us, because it was also at that point that I was involved in making sure that every home in Singapore was cabled up. So you could see that with this huge pipe that was being put into everyone's home, that content was going to explode. And with the explosion of content and with the explosion of commercialization and commerce in that space, you knew that it would only be good for the creative industry. So a lot of that growth was driven with a very clear sense of commerce. Yeah.
And essentially, I think in summary, you felt all through the years that the strong support from the government has actually helped the creative industry.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. And now that I'm with Mediacorp, and where a large chunk of our funding comes from the government, I believe very wholeheartedly in it.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm a product.
Yeah.
of part of that government funding. I owe my career. I'm going to sound very PAP here, but you know, I can't help but feel extremely grateful.
So this is a very nationalistic viewpoint on that. Well, it'll be interesting to hear different viewpoint from somebody from outside. Seema, can you give me your views?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Seema, and IAS is one of my night or pro bono jobs. I'm actually the principal consultant at R3, which is my day job. So we keep abreast with everything, what's happening in the marketing and the agency world in Singapore and globally. What is interesting for me as an outsider, I've been in Singapore now for 18 years. And when I first came in, the National Library used to be where SMU was, so there was no SMU at that time. And I'm sure some of the younger ones here are looking at me and going, what is she talking about? Was there a time before SMU? Yes, there was, and I was there. And that beautiful pink building where I used to spend my early days in Singapore got broken down because they were going to move it. And to me, it was heartbreaking, and I'd only been in the country less than a year. So Renaissance and Singapore did not really merge in my head. However, it's very interesting to see over the years how things have changed. And slowly, creativity, arts are getting a lot of prominence in Singapore. One of the things, for example, the La Salle University and what they are trying to do with, now they have so many different courses when it comes to overall arts, graphic design, creativity. And one of the biggest breakthroughs, in my opinion, was when Singapore opened the National Gallery. And that was truly embarking on the next phase of getting arts to the people, and not only from Singapore, but also Southeast Asia. So it's extremely interesting to see the journey that Singapore has made, and there is definitely a big push by the government because they have realized that when Singapore was first formed, there was a lot of emphasis on the STEMs, on science, technology, engineering, math. But it's not possible for any country to develop just by having those loosely called hard subjects. And it is extremely important to embed creativity and arts into the school curriculums and then see how the talent actually grows.
I think from a different perspective, it'll be very interesting to hear from you, Vivian.
Absolutely.
Who basically, you've had many global clients that you worked with, like Coca-Cola, P&G, etc.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your perspective.
So, my history in Singapore has been about 18 years, and I came on board to Yahoo as one of the veterans of digital, you know, really trying to break open the technology space. And I've seen the entire market evolve over the past decade and a half. And what's really interesting for me is the fact that, you know, Singapore has always been very innovative and energetic, you know, to embrace new technologies and to push it forward. You know, then you have to match it with the appetite of the client, as well as the pace of the ability to adapt and adopt that technology. You know, so frankly, in fact, you know, over the past 10 years, we have seen that pace grow faster, you know, with the support of the government. But, you know, an area whereby we definitely do need to tighten up is that it's not just about the hardware. It's not about, you know, innovating for the sake of technology. It's also about how do we bring the hardware, the people, the soft skills into this to actually make it a reality, especially in the creative area. So working on clients such as P&G and Coca-Cola, a lot of these initiatives at this point in time is still being spearheaded by these global brands, you know, with their holistic thinking, and it gets cascaded down. But Singapore is unique in the sense that since we are small, since we are a digital first, dare I say, mobile first market, it means that we can be that pilot market to be able to springboard new technologies, new innovations to the rest of the APAC and potentially the rest of the world. And so this is where I see an immense opportunities to bring forth and to groom great new generation talent, but that new generation talent has to be augmented as well with the type of available talent that exists in the rest of the world to be able to build our foundations stronger as well. So I do believe that we need a very defined program to be able to mentor and inculcate the younger generation into thinking how can we think more progressively, but not just about that technology. It's about how do we tell the right stories in this digital age, whereby as a media agency or creative agency, we're following the storylines and those touch points through technology, through the use of multimedia channels to engage with them.
I wanted to add that I concur with what Vivian's saying. In fact, one of the highlights of my stint at Mediacorp over the last few months has been our Cannes Lions, Young Lions competition. This year we saw about more than a 25% increase in the number of entries, and the biggest jump came from the category of cyber. So every year we sponsor 3 teams to go and compete. In fact, last year Singapore came back with the gold. So we actually have a lot to be very proud of, and there is a lot of young talent out there. And when we look at the cohort of people who entered, we were actually quite surprised that a large part of that cohort is kind of like this panel: fewer guys, a lot of women.
So this whole talent discussion, clearly there's a lot that we can do from it. But how do you feel about it? Have you got concerns actually that we have perhaps talent drain or competition going regionally?
Yeah, well, absolutely. You know, I think one of the perennial challenges in the media or advertising industry is to really find great young talent to groom. So within Group M, which is my I suppose my mothership holding company, we have undertaken our own recruitment initiative with universities as well. And what we find is that I wouldn't call it any brain drain per se in terms of the younger generation, but perhaps a mismatch in terms of perhaps what they're studying, you know, at these schools versus what the reality of life is in the media industry, because the media industry is evolving so much faster. So now typically when we hire someone, we don't hire someone from mass comm. Our preference is to hire someone who is very numerical, you know, someone who's from finance or accounting, you know, who has a very scientific mind to it, because it's all converging towards understanding numbers that will unlock you to understanding technology as well.
And also what we feel what's happening with talent now. So earlier when you're looking at talent, ultimately these are students who are going to start their career. And how much ever we want to be lofty about our ideals, there is the money factor. And till today, an advertising executive is probably one of the lowest paid in the entire gamut of professional services. And earlier when I started my career in advertising, and I'll show my age here, advertising agencies had a cachet. To work in advertising, there was a glam factor. People used to be, my friends was, whoa, you work in an ad agency, how cool are you? And now it's like, you work in an ad agency? Like, really? You're overworked, you are underpaid, and now you have competition from what is called the FANGs, the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google of the world. And they have the cachet now. They are, as you mentioned, they are merging technology and creativity. So how do advertising agencies and marketing media agencies actually still stay desirable for students is a big question. And then, of course, as Mevai rightly pointed out, once they do come into the fray, then how do you keep them going? And what kind of training and talent development plans does marketing have in order to keep them going?
I think from my point of view, I think the brain drain is inevitable. I was sharing with Mei-Wai earlier today that last year when I was at a juncture in my career, I mean, there was a really large, very big, strong push in my heart to go overseas. Go work in a market like Indonesia, 270 million people. Go work in the Philippines, again, 75 million people. Go work in Vietnam. I think for someone who's creative in the media, you're constantly looking for a bigger and bigger canvas on which to splash your colors. And I think that's probably one of the shortcomings of Singapore. It's not something we can do, nothing much we can do about it. But I think if we accept the brain drain, but yet create schemes or create an environment in Singapore that these creatives want to come circle back to, I think we would be richer for it, because those experiences overseas are invaluable.
That's definitely true, because it's also a question of what kind of fertile environment is Singapore creating to get people to come back. Because once you leave, you go out for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. At some point, everyone, and speaking as an expat, everyone always feels, should I go back home? So what is Singapore creating as home when it comes to the creativity for them to attract people back? So recently with IAS, we've had an initiative, and which is strangely the first time ever that's happened. So thanks to IAS and EDB for making it come true, is there is a mentor and mentorship program specifically for the marketing industry, where experienced mentors are paired up with younger mentees, and through the course of 1 year, we are going to give them advice and tips and try to mold their careers and get this level to the next level, so these young people can then form a future in the marketing industry. And this program is specifically done for Singaporeans in Singapore, which is extremely interesting, because then you're grooming that talent. And this is an initiative by a third-party body. It was not something, sadly, that was initiated by the companies themselves. So the other thing that agencies and marketeers need to look at internally is what kind of training and development are they doing to actually help retain and groom all these people.
So just on that point as well, you know, from a lens of media, you know, there is definitely a sense of the fact that the media agency or creative agency are not involving themselves faster, and that's by virtue of the fact that Singapore being a small nation, we don't have that scale to be able to create and have our own R&D and innovations hub in that respect. And so that means that, you know, for people in advertising, it means that their pace of growth in adopting innovation and technology may be a little bit slow as well. So from our side, absolutely, we need to take responsibility of creating a proper career development map, you know, that can actually match those type of opportunities within the Googles and the Facebooks of your world as well. And we need to do that together, you know, with Singapore, with the IMDA, to be able to put together the resources so that we can support those levels of, you know, technology advancement.
But irregardless of that, training and all that, I mean, we have to face that Singapore is indeed a little red dot. And picking up on some of the points you've talked about, we can continue in this manner, but the region is also picking up in a big way. I mean, we have our Tam Kai Mings, they will not come back. We have David Tang, who is nationalistic, he's back and then he brings business through. We have the Singaporeans who have gone out and they've come back. But it is a true fact that we are also losing a number of them. From a standpoint of agencies now having to adapt work rather than to develop global work, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So, you know, one of the advantages of belonging to a larger WPP group and network or consortium is the fact that we can actually bring, you know, the best practices, the gold standards in technology innovation, planning, tools, etc., to Singapore as well. And so we're fortunate that Singapore is the APAC hub, you know, for a lot of these big brands, whether it is your P&Gs, your Unilevers, your Coca-Colas, etc. And they are actually playing a big part in the entire Singapore ecosystem, you know, to be able to give us these opportunities that we need to embrace, to bring on board new thinking. And the difference being is the fact that it's clear for us that the global clients have a much higher appetite. So, you know, take for example, Mark Pritchard, you know, who's the global CEO of P&G. Now, he's been raising the red flag about, you know, iVideo viewability with Google. Now, these things may not have been addressed in Singapore, but it's because we have access to these clients that these issues, you know, are being cascaded down, and they can be cascaded down seriously as well. From a local perspective, and we handle local brands as well, it still is very much about ROI, you know, getting the best out of your buck. And innovation and the perception is that technology, VR, AI is expensive. But we have to come to terms as brands to realize that you need to make the right investments, because it's not about the product, it's not about the actual technology, it's about how you apply it to create those storylines to engage. As a mature market, we're not talking about awareness, we're talking about how do we convince clients to buy.
So if you have actually a team going in to pitch or to service a global client, it will be interesting for you to share what's the percentage of Singaporeans versus foreigners, foreign creative talent that you put in the team?
I don't think it's right to differentiate it in Singaporean versus foreign talent, because ultimately at R3, when we actually look at, we help facilitate a lot of these agency reviews, the first thing that we look at is the fit correct? Are you putting the right person in front of the client in terms of the person's profile? And the team together should have the skill sets to deliver on the client's business. It should not matter, and in most cases it does not matter whether who's on the team and which country they are from. In fact, one of the edge that Singapore has is the diversity. So when I first started working in Singapore, in a company of 12 people, there were 10 different nationalities. It was mind-boggling and fascinating. And there's no other country, I think, in the world, as much as America claims to be very diverse, but in such a small place like a red dot, to work with nationalities from all over the world is actually a privilege and something that marketing, brands, and creativity can learn from and actually create work that is a lot more challenging and innovative, rather than looking at who's coming from which country and how's that team formed.
Seema, basically, can you also give us some insight into local agencies and the growth behind the local
that's
agencies?
That's one thing I wanted to, I know, Vivian, you've been talking about P&G and Coke, and definitely for a small country like Singapore to have big brands do their regional and global work out of Singapore is extremely important, because that's how we actually sustain the industry. However, we cannot ignore and look at the other side that Singapore is the country which gave birth to Singapore Airlines, which is one of the biggest and the best brands in the world. But how Singapore Airlines advertised or communicated themselves is totally different on what they're doing with Scoot. So Scoot is again a homegrown brand, but the way Scoot has adapted to the digital world by using social media as their primary channel for all kinds of communication, by relying heavily on topical content to actually engage with the consumers, is extremely exciting. And not even a lot of the global brands are actually doing it in that kind of fast-paced way like a Scoot has. And to answer your question on local agencies, there are several local agencies in Singapore that are totally homegrown. Example, TSLA, which is the Secret Little Agency, which is homegrown from Singapore and now has opened up in Shanghai, in Hong Kong, and other places. They are doing global work and regional work out of Singapore. There are several agencies like Kinetic, where the founders of there are extremely passionate about raising the bars of creativity in Singapore. So there's definitely a good balance here of independent network agencies as well as local homegrown shops which are working together in this environment.
Dasheng?
Actually, something that was brought up by both these ladies is, I think after you take out the nuts and bolts and the technical skills, it all comes down within this creative agency, the ability to tell a story. And I think we're finding that it's becoming very, very important. We at Mediacorp, for example, this year, just from popular demand, we had to size up what we call our brand studio. And brand studio actually works with our clients to develop storylines and to develop engagement opportunities throughout our media platforms, as well as being platform agnostic. And I think that is where we can play, because other countries are going to have lots of people who are going to be great FA artists or great at special effects. I think the thinking and the analytics is where we can play very strongly, and I think we have the background in order to stand our ground.
That's right, absolutely. So, just to add on to that point, and the reason why we have this opportunity is the fact that, technology gives us data. Data gives us the analytics, and it also gives us the ability to really profile consumers so much more succinctly. So that means that, the likes of your global brands, they have actually changed their, every 2 years, their team structure, org structure, so it's become a lot more global, which means that they're looking at a lot more local insights, local nuances to understand how to reach out to their clients. And so it means that, with the availability of data insights, whether it's through, your Facebooks, tracking any of your digital initiatives, we can pinpoint it and it's accessible, and there is space in the sandpit for both big agencies and small agencies. And I find that small agencies, if they're local, they know the nuances of the market to weave together touch points and a stronger, more compelling consumer-centric campaign.
I wanted to echo that. I started my career in Singapore at the start of this whole cable TV wave. And a lot of American channels came to Singapore and decided, we're going to take what works in New York City, it's going to work in Singapore, it's going to work in Taipei, it's going to work in Hong Kong. And they soon discovered, oops, it doesn't work. So they started big teams that started to have to localize the content, create local content that resonated with the target audience. I think Singapore has played in this entire region so well. We have friends all over. The APAC region is probably the region with the biggest contribution to the creative industry, value-wise. So being in that center of it and building strength as that hub serves us really, really well.
And one thing that Singapore has an edge, as I mentioned before, when it comes to the diversity of talent. So for example, if you see creative, if you just look at advertising, I'm not even talking about movies or music, the work that comes out of a country like Thailand or in India is extremely interesting, and I think it's far ahead when it comes in creativity. However, it's relevant only in those markets. The humor that you see in Thai ads, if you take it out of context and outside Thailand, it's probably not really understood. And the emotions that go in everything Indian, including the advertising, again, is completely not taken when it's outside that country. However, when it comes to Singapore, the ability to create any kind of content that actually works for different audiences is a lot high, because in our daily lives, we interact with people from so many different cultures. So naturally, the content needs to be something that engages all of them.
And I completely agree, in the sense that content now, it plays a much bigger part, especially native content in, connecting with your consumers. And, especially with companies such as Unruly and other companies that can actually measure audience sentiment towards your pre-rolls, your videos. It means that you can, really refine that communication message even sharper than, relying on a creative agency that's going to give you a TVC that's going to be adapted to a billboard, a print ad, and a static banner. And, this is where I feel that, especially with the clients that are our government clients, they've really begun to embrace it a lot more. The challenges for government is really about, behavioral change. It's about awareness, about engagement for certain government policies that have, that will be adopted. And it's about, how do we create content that's going to be compelling for our consumers to want to read and, reflect about it as well.
Yeah, and on that point, I think we come back to this whole talent issue in Singapore, where a lot of people, a lot of young ones, I'm using that now, enter this industry, and it's a complete mismatch in expectations, right? So they don't understand that the industry has moved beyond just the creative part, that the creative part is married so heavily with analytics, and that, the left and right brain combination is now incredibly powerful.
I think we've talked about many interesting things, from the government support to diversity to content data. But I think that at the end of it, at the heart of it, when I hear you guys talking, it's about the people that's really, connects with you. Maybe we can spend some time talking about this from the learnings we've had. What can we actually do moving forward to continue this wins and creative renaissance for Singapore?
I think fundamentally, and speaking as a parent, what is extremely important is to review some of the education curriculums and the kind of, even the messaging and the posturing we give our kids when it comes to arts. So arts is a very integral part and should be a very integral part of any growing up years in education as well as in extracurricular activities. And that is something Singapore as a nation needs to start giving more focus on. It has already started where in the last 10 years there's been a drastic change and a shift in the importance of overall arts and creativity.
Actually, on that, I'm going to jump in. To prepare for this session, I was just looking through some stats in Singapore. How many of you would realize that there are between 70 to 80 performances and exhibitions in Singapore on any given day? It's amazing.
On a given day?
On a given day.
That is pretty amazing. But then the other part of that is that most of us don't realize that. So then it again becomes the fact that what are we doing overall to actually imbibe this creativity individually? So when there are these 60, 70 different performances happening in Singapore, there are that many people actually know about it and actually go to it. And that is something that needs to be fundamentally done since kids actually, since when we are younger.
Actually, if you profile, what they call themselves the strawberry generations, what you find about them is that they're soft, and they do want to find roles that give them a purpose and a passion in life. And so they see work, very differently from your XYZs, and dare I say baby boomers as well, for the older crowd here. And so what they're looking for is actually not a company that will give them maybe a structured career development path. They're looking for more meaningful interaction whereby there is one-on-one coaching, one-on-one mentoring, so they do feel very much more inclusive as well. And so obviously, it moves up the rungs from, when they're a child, when they go to school as well, being more lateral-minded, and it's a lot about, grooming them to be more open-minded about what the potentials and opportunities are.
But what can agencies or employers do as well to ensure that we continue to grow this? Are we really supportive of training? All employers say, I'm really supportive of training. I spend X amount of time training my people. But is that genuine?
Yeah. I will say that I've been at Mediacorp for 6 months, and I would say I'm incredibly impressed that year on year, we double our number of training hours. And I think that's also because you're in the media and things are moving that fast, and you are not adapting, you're trying to evolve and also innovate at the same time. I think the only thing you can do is train. At the same time, I will also share that it's a double-edged sword. We talk about the strawberry generation, but the strawberry generation was really created out of a certain program. As a hobby, I grow orchids. And orchids, I will tell you, the main cause of a death of an orchid is caring too much. Right? You buy an orchid, you think it's very expensive, you care too much for it, you water it too much, it dies. Actually, orchids bloom the best and grow the best when they're tested. It's a little bit too hot, it's a little bit too cold, there's fluctuation, and they learn and they adapt and they give you the best flowers. So I think that there's a little bit of that. I think we shouldn't sway too far where we're creating mentorship programs like Upstarts and all that, because I think what that creates is it creates something that's very easy for anyone to partake in, but what you don't bring out is an intrinsic passion of that person for that industry and that type of work.
Okay, so that's an interesting comment, because I beg to differ in some ways, as I would. My husband would know that as well. So anyway, for me and my experience, over the past 15, 16 years in advertising, it is always very hard to acquire great talent. And, there is a fine balance. But what I do find is that, they actually want to know more. They want to know more about, not just about what they do, but actually about what the company does as well, because they want to feel that they're playing a bigger part, a bigger role in something bigger as well. Testing and learning, we've had, very mixed, patchy experiences that, old school wise in media when I first started, you basically sink or swim. The first 2 years of your life, you're grinding away, working till like midnight every day, but you don't even dare question anything. You'll still wind up at 9 o'clock in the morning and do the same thing for 365 days a year and not even ask for leave. So recently I had a planner, in fact, he was an intern who came on board, and what was really, I suppose stumped me was that I was having lunch with him, and I asked him, so what would you like to do as your career? And he said, I want to be a media planner. Like, no one in the entire world says that, so I thought, okay, this is the one I need to keep. So after he finished, his internship, we offered him a permanent position. After 3 months, he approached me and said, Viv, I don't think it's working out. And, I don't think I want to be a media planner anymore, so I'd like to leave. So, in that way, they are very difficult to understand. And for him, it was really about, okay, how can I balance? How can I balance my nurturing side? I want to learn, I want to feel the passion, but also give a little bit of hard love as well. So I don't think anyone's cracked that yet, but, we're working towards that anyway.
Yeah. Well, it was an extremely interesting panel, and thank you so much. We've come to the end of it. Thank you, Dasheng.
My pleasure.
Seema, and Vivian.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.